Critical Role Recap Season 2, Episode 67. Last week, the Mighty Nein made it to the town north of the giant tree where they ran away from the rock, and they sent a message off to Oban, who the drow that they've been chasing ever since they failed to apprehend him in the ambush at Rosanna. And the drow gave them directions to this secret entrance that they made their way to, and they eventually found themselves inside of some sort of dark dungeon with a bunch of celestial statues crying tears of blood facing towards a doorway that has a very small, like 3 to 4 foot opening underneath. So we started off this episode with them crawling through to the other side. The large majority of this episode was spent in combat. And the first bout of combat was against a giant abyssal, probably, or demon spider who had a whole brood of spider babies with it. They ended up going up against this giant spider in addition to probably like a dozen other little spiders. There were a bunch of them running around that they killed. The giant spider managed to get off a critical attack in the first shot against the spider and actually killed it in one hit. After that, they managed to clean up the rest of the spiders pretty easily and then started to investigate further through this dark, dank, weird crypt tomb-like place. Caleb had turned into a spider, a giant spider, to match the one that he was fighting against, crawled through the area that the spider had come from, and there he found basically a bunch of egg sacs for other spiders and babies, and there were also spider webs all over the place, so they used some fire spells to clear up all of that and burn all the little baby spiders and the egg sacs and stuff. After that, they continued on their way through this tomb thing, and they began to notice a lot of mist pooling on the ground, and as they got further in, it came higher and higher up to their ankles and then their knees. Bo chucked out one of her ball bearings, and in doing so found that there was a large drop-off ahead of them. So they carefully moved their way forward and then found that there was a long spiraling staircase leading down through this empty cylindrical tower sort of structure. They began making their way down in single file because there's only about 3 feet wide on each step. Ford at the front steps down onto one of these steps and sets off some sort of trigger. Caduceus notices some sort of low rumbling sound after this happens, and so then they begin kind of hurrying on their way, and Matt has them go ahead and roll initiative and starts an hourglass timer. So they start sprinting down as quickly as they can, and while they're going down, there is also some sort of mist creature that comes out from invisibility and attacks them and then goes back into invisibility and disappears at the end of its turn. So they're being harried by this invisible creature, and then every now and then when this hourglass fills up, a lightning attack goes off that seems to emanate from below them and electrocutes everyone in the room, taking lightning damage as it coursed through the mist that is completely surrounding them and obfuscating their vision. They do manage to get off some pot shots at this invisible creature thanks to attacks of opportunity and some held actions when it arrives. However, most of this combat is spent with them using everything they can to try and run down as quickly as possible. Bo uses Step of the Wind and her increased speed to make it down first, and then she also jumps down, and thanks to slow fall, takes no damage after she falls about 40 or 50 feet. At the bottom, she sees some sort of magical machine that appears to be powering up and is then letting off these lightning strikes. When Bo's turn finally comes around again, she investigates this weird contraption and finds that there seems to be some sort of gem or shard powering the entire thing inside. So she reaches in and does a strength check to rip it out, taking some lightning damage, but powering down the machine. Jester and Caleb both turn into eagles to fly down faster and help escort some people. Jester picks up a few people in her talons and brings them all down as they're still getting harried now and then by this invisible mist creature. And then Bo takes the thing that she had pulled out of the machine and finds a slot in this door at the bottom of the tower. She sticks it in, the door's open, and the Mighty Nein all make their way through. Caleb casts a final fireball at this mist creature and possibly kills it, but we're not really sure. But they make their way out of the mist, and the mist creature is no longer bothering them. They continue on their way through this path and eventually come into a room that has some sort of altar with like 3 different circular slots inside of it. Caduceus casts a healing spell on everyone, And Bo goes over and checks out this altar, which when she touches it, it depresses and sets off another trap. Caduceus had noticed through Eyes of the Grave that there were stacks of undead bodies all under them. After this altar gets activated, the undead begin to claw their way up from below and start to attack them. Jester uses Turn the Dead, which, because they're undead, is extremely effective and vaporizes like 13 of them or something immediately. A few of them drop some sort of like glowing thing, and they later find out that they are the glowing hearts. And the zombies that they're fighting against have this chance to roll and just not die every time they take damage. So a lot of them will come back up immediately after being killed, but not quite killed. However, they do finally manage to kill off enough of them and get them to drop their glowing hearts or tear the hearts out of them and then deposit them into the altar slots that they had originally noticed. And once they finally manage to get 3 hearts, 3 glowing hearts from these zombies into the slots, it deactivates the trap and the zombies crumble away to nothing and no longer present a danger to them. At this point, the doors ahead of them also open. The door behind them had closed, which now opens, and the door ahead of them also opens. So they continue on their way forward and find themselves in yet another extremely dark and difficult to see anything area. This time it appears when they look out across, there's this chasm that opens up before them, which they cannot see across. There is a bridge that they see stretching across it. However, they can only see about 30 feet out because of dark vision's radius. And just in general, all of the light seems to be impacted by this area. None of their light spells seem to give off as much light as they should. Caleb is completely worn out from the fight, and a lot of people have taken a lot of damage, and he also only has 1 spell slot left. So he goes ahead and casts Leomund's tiny hut, and the plan is for them all to spend the night taking turns sleeping inside the hut and keeping watch. However, when Bo goes to throw another ball bearing, it falls into the chasm, and then immediately voices, like thousands of voices and screams, kind of whisper up, come up from the chasm, and she has to roll a wisdom check, I believe it is, and she does manage to avoid it. However, later, after they get up the tiny hut, Not speaks a little bit too loudly, and the voices again come up, and everyone in the party is affected by it, and they have to roll to see whether or not they'll be affected. 3 of them fail, but all 3 of them are just like basically made catatonic for about 6 seconds. It seems like Matt rolls some sort of random effect that'll have on them if they do get impacted and don't meet the wisdom check. So they decide to tie each other together with the silver string so that there'll be an alarm that goes off that Caleb can hear, I assume, if any of them do try and wander off, because they're worried that these voices might try and entice people to go over the edge. And basically they go ahead and bed down for the night, and that's right where we close off the episode. So they're going to attempt to sleep right here by this bottomless pit that leads into a bunch of undead creepy creatures and stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.